thanks guys for coming again. For you that don't know me, my name is Ryan Atkins, with the Verona Police Department. I've been with the department since 2003, and I'm part of the triad that works here with the senior center and Mary. And at the beginning of the year, we try to get together and come up with ideas or topics that we can discuss in the future. And we've had a lot of topics where we've kind of just been doing the same ones over and over, so we tried to brainstorm some new ideas. And one of the ideas that we had come up with is maybe having me present on neighborhood watch type programs. So that's the primary reason for me being here today, and then I'm going to just touch also on some local interest crimes that we have going on that could affect any one of us. I do live in the city of Verona. I'm the only officer on the force that lives in the city of Verona. Thanks for joining us. So I not only have a vested interest in this community because I work here, but I also live here. My kids go to school here. So Neighborhood Watch has changed a lot. I mean, even from the time of its inception, from the time I became a police officer. I'm sure a lot of you folks notice that a lot of stuff is over social media nowadays. And that's kind of where Neighborhood Watch is going to too. And later on, I got some stuff I can show you on the computer. Any people here use cell phones?
No.
Internet? Anybody on
internet?
I don't have internet either.
Okay.
No, we don't either.
We don't either.
All right. Well, the program I'll show you again, you know, it's very handy. You know, if you guys have been considering getting a cell phone or internet or something like that, this would be a good reason. But if not, then we'll just stick with the old tried and true method of Neighborhood Watch. So instead of doing a PowerPoint presentation like I typically do, because sometimes it's hard for people to see it when they're sitting in the room and to hear me, I thought, well, if we sat down at a table and kind of had more of a informal, intimate meeting session, then maybe folks would get more out of it. So the handout that is the Neighborhood Watch is the one that's stapled together. So it's the two-page one. So right now, currently in Verona, can you guys guess how many Neighborhood Watch programs we have?
0.
There you go. Alderman Steiner knows the answer. 0. We don't have a single Neighborhood Watch program. And again, you know, I don't know really what to attribute it to. I've had people approach me in the past and ask me to help start one up. They typically happen when we see a rash of crime in a particular neighborhood. And people get concerned because for the most part, Verona's a quiet community. Everybody knows their neighbors. We don't have a lot of crime that makes headlines here in Verona, which is a good thing. But when we do, that's when people kind of get shocked, and then that's when they want to get together with neighbors and start Neighborhood Watch programs. Typically when I get those phone calls is when we see a rash of vehicle break-ins. And that's the next form here we'll touch on, because we just had a rash of vehicle break-ins a couple weeks ago here in Verona. Typically when we see stuff like that, it's usually condensed to a certain neighborhood. So a lot of people within that neighborhood are immediately affected. And then they start talking to their neighbors, and then they have the perception that, oh, maybe Verona is not the best place to live. Maybe we have a lot of crime that goes on. In reality, when somebody comes in and does a mass crime like that, they usually just pick a particular neighborhood because they want to get in and out in a hurry. So that's why we'll see a jumbled group of break-ins. So the reason Neighborhood Watch programs were implemented years ago is it helped with a sense of security while living in your neighborhood. So again, I'm sure it happened where maybe there's a neighborhood where there was a lot of burglaries or a lot of thefts, and people were just tired of getting victimized and having their neighbors be victimized, and they decided to come together as a group and meet with the police and figure out what type of steps can we do, whether it's prevention, to stop these things from happening. Next big one here, which I think is very applicable to Verona, is resale value of homes. One big thing with crime is if people are letting their communities go, like Alderman Steiner said, if people are littering or nobody's doing anything about it, what's that say to outsiders that come into Verona? This is a dumpy city. These people don't care about their property. They don't care about their neighbors. This is an easy target. This is a place we want to come to do business. If people are keeping their houses nice and their property nice, and again, we do this through knowing our neighbors and having neighborhood groups, they'll upkeep their property. And again, outsiders come in, hey, this is a nice place to visit. And criminals are like, well, these people care about their neighborhood. They're taking the measures that they need to be taken. This is not an easy target. They'll move on. I think that's one of the reasons we don't see a lot of break-ins in Verona. When our neighbor to the east, Fitchburg, they have a high crime rate when it comes to property crimes. And again, because some of the neighborhoods in Fitchburg, not all the neighborhoods in Fitchburg, but some of the immediate neighborhoods in Fitchburg, if you've been there before, you'll see those type of neighborhoods where you have abandoned vehicles or properties where there's garbage stored outside, stuff like that. Next one, getting people to care about their neighbors when things are good. Again, that's what I talked about before. People don't want to get involved in their neighborhood and partner with the police when times are good, because we're busy. I mean, that's very simple. People are busy, they got other things to do. It's when things happen. It's when that neighborhood gets a lot of vehicle break-ins or burglaries, where people all of a sudden want to take action. And that's what neighborhood programs are designed for. They're designed to be proactive, to try to prevent those things from happening before they do, and then trying to get the program implemented. And neighborhood cohesion. Again, people, the society we live in today, like I said, a lot of stuff is on the computer, social media. Neighbors aren't getting out in their yards and introducing themselves to new neighbors or old neighbors. People don't know their neighbors by name anymore because everybody's doing everything over the computer. So again, it's a nice way for neighbors to come together and talk about issues or problems in their neighborhood that they can problem solve together. So the last thing there, being a nosy neighbor, I mean that's a good thing, being a nosy neighbor and asking, well, there's been a car parked down there, down the street for 2 or 3 weeks. It hasn't moved. I don't recognize it to be any of my neighbor's vehicle. Be a nosy neighbor. Ask your neighbor, hey, who's that vehicle belong to? Because it may not belong to anybody in the neighborhood. It could be a stolen vehicle, or it could be, something inside that vehicle that somebody who is not from the neighborhood is going to come back at a later date and time and do something with that. So, don't be afraid to talk with your neighbors and ask them questions like that.
Is this something I live in a township, can I use this information and give it to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing with neighborhood watchers, they work best, obviously, within your neighborhood. The larger you get, it probably won't be as effective because, again, you have a vested interest in your immediate neighborhood. Mr. Steiner lives, up on the northeast side of Verona. I live on the far southeast side of Verona. I might not care as much what's happening up by K Park, and Mr. Steiner might not care as much what's happening at Cathedral Point Park. So it does help to kind of minimize the geographical area of a neighborhood watch, but in a rural setting, obviously that's going to expand because you got greater distance between your neighbors.
Except on Range Trail. You might benefit from having one there, because there's homes now.
Yeah.
Well, several of us little old ladies, we're busy talking all the time and asking everything what's going on.
And that's the premise behind Neighborhood Watch anyway. It's communication. It's communication with you and your neighbors and letting them know, hey, this is what I'm seeing. or this happened to me. Because lots of times when we get, I'll keep going back to the vehicle break-ins. You'd be surprised how many people have their vehicles broken into that don't even report it. Whether it's because they're embarrassed that, all right, I left my car unlocked or I left my window down and now my purse got stolen. I don't want to go down and talk to the police because they're going to think, you know, I was an idiot. Or they just think, hey, you know, nothing can be done about it. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, they either see it in the Verona Press or they talk, you know, they see their neighbor at Miller's and say, you know, the neighbor said, hey, you know what happened to me a couple weeks ago? All the change was stolen out of my vehicle. And now all of a sudden they don't feel so foolish because, you know, and they shouldn't because it happens. But now they feel more comfortable reporting it because, hey, it happened to somebody else. So we'll get that a lot where 2 or 3 weeks later, all of a sudden we're getting somebody reporting, hey, I saw in the Verona Press that cars were getting broken into up on Aspen Avenue. Well, I live a block over and I had stuff missing from my car too, but I didn't think anything could be done about it. So I mean, that's the big premise behind Neighborhood Watch. It's just getting neighbors to talk and realizing that, hey, you know what? Maybe the same problem I'm experiencing is the same issue that Mary down the street is experiencing. If we get together and pool our resources and talk about this, maybe we can come up with a solution. You know, so yes, it will work. So
Yeah, we have to have little old ladies in our communities that
yeah.
talk.
So one of the the multiple benefits of Neighborhood Watch is it unites communities, it builds relationships.
Do you have reports in the city of Verona of gunshots? We do out where we live.
You know, no, not really. Usually, you know, we'll get 1 or 2 around hunting season. You know, where they're not too far off range trail or something like that. But yeah, like, you know, I guess when you ask me that question, I'm thinking more of like the gunshots of like a drive-by shooting, which is usually related to like gang activity.
We had the house next door,
Okay.
and that was shot into about 3 summers ago.
Okay.
And the Dane County deputy said, it's kids,
Sure.
you know.
No, the last shooting I can recall that we had in Verona of actual shots fired is when an individual shot Grace Hyde House. You know, that's been several years ago now, and that individual was apprehended. But I know we don't. Fortunately, we don't get the drive-by shootings in town. Hopefully, we never will. So
Yeah, we have more little crime things.
And again, it reduces crimes in neighborhoods. You know, if this is something that's advertised that, hey, you know, whether it's from posting signs or from meetings that are being posted on the internet, like Andy may do with this, you know, letting those potential criminals know that, hey, this is a neighborhood watch neighborhood that I'm thinking about going into. You know, again, they're going for an easy target. They want to be in and out. They don't want people, you know, they don't want to be in a neighborhood where they suspect a neighborhood watch program is in place. Because again, they're trying to get in and out without being apprehended or reported or something like that. So that's a good benefit to it too.
We're having some of the folks in our community starting to grow. They're purchasing large dogs, and they just feel safer.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
With a large dog.
And that's one of the things I saw in here too, is with dogs, you know, some people don't want to own dogs. There are things you can do. This gets a little bit away from the neighborhood watch. This gets more to the crime prevention. But there are things you can do to harden your home, short of going out and getting a big German Shepherd or Doberman Pinscher or something like you see in the movies. You can buy a beware of dog sign and stick it on your front door. That type of thing. Again, it's just these are the things that potential criminals are looking for. You know, they're looking for, you know, they do their homework just like what police do. They're doing their homework. They're not just, most of their crimes are not spur of the moment things. They're actually going out there and they're driving through the neighborhoods and they're driving slow and they're looking at this house and they're looking at that house and they're looking at the houses where the garage door is left open. They're looking at the house where they can tell that the windows are being left open. They're checking to see if people are around and they're making notes of that. And those are the type of houses that they'll come back to, and that's another thing that they look for. Some people don't have alarm systems in their home because they're costly. But you can go out and you can buy a ADT alarm sign and stick it in your front yard, and that's giving the impression that, oh, this house has an alarm system on it. Want to avoid that house. Just like with the dog, beware of the dog. You may not own a dog, but you're giving the perception to that person that this house has a dog. So those are all good things that you can do.
Some of us have window blocks.
Yeah.
I do.
Those are great things to have as well.
Our other neighbors have windows that have.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, thank you for joining us. Oh, road to glory.
How are you, bud? Sandy, how are you?
These are features that we never hear you people talk about, these window blocks.
Yeah.
And large dogs, as I see my neighbors, because they see someone different walking on our street, because we're kind of a settlement.
Yeah.
And we have 8 units, and we have 4 units, we have 2 units, so there's a lot of people moving. And there's concern about some of the 8 units will have a friend that will come and stay for a week or 2. Where did he come from?
Yeah, but no, again, like we said, that's the part of the communication. If you're seeing individuals in your neighborhood that don't belong, that just you've never seen before, something doesn't seem right. If you anybody here live at the Sugar Creek Senior Apartments? No. Well, again, if you live in an apartment complex, for the most part, you know who belongs there. You know families that visit on a regular basis. If somebody just seems out of place, if they seem like they're lost or they're looking for something, don't be afraid to call the police for that stuff. I mean, that's what we're here for. We can always look into that and identify that person and figure out, okay, what purpose, what business do you have here, and go from there.
Well, my neighbor across the street had some medical problems. Mm-hmm. And, well, anyway, she had come back from her medical problems. But that evening, I saw a flashlight going around her trash bins. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I better watch this for a while. Well, to make the long story short, after I watched it for some time, I called it the Dane County Patrol, and they came out. Well, that person that had the flashlight went and hid. Mm-hmm. And, well, they went, and then the deputies went down and searched the backyard and around the trash bins and all that. Well, after they'd been there for a while and nothing showed up naturally, well, they left. And gosh, 10 minutes later, that same person was back with the flashlight.
Yeah. But it's good that you called it in. That's what we need. And that's actually one of the next benefits I was going to list. It helps with improving reporting, because again, if we build a relationship between our neighborhoods and police, people become more apt to report things. Little things that they didn't, well, it just didn't seem right, but I didn't want to bother them with it, or I didn't want to bother my neighbors with it. People just, they feel more comfortable if they know the police more on a first name basis that, well, hey, I just wanted to let you know this. It might not be a big deal, but this car's been parked down the street, every day this week during this time frame. It might be as simple as some guy eating lunch in his vehicle on his lunch break, and he wants to go sit someplace quiet. Or it might be like what we talked about before, somebody parking there and kind of watching the routine of people in the neighborhood. Well, I know number 302 there, it looks like everybody leaves by 9 in the morning, and 312 down here, it looks like the guy comes home from lunch between 12 and noon. So, that's what we're trying to impress upon people, call them those little things. We'll look into it. It might not be anything, but it might. Prevents and reduces crime, we already talked about that, and increases awareness of ongoing concerns and problems. And again, this is the sharing of information between neighbors, which might not have been there before. And then it builds avenues for solutions to neighborhood issues. So, like I said before, maybe Mary has had a concern about a particular thing in the neighborhood, and once, what's your name?
Anna.
Anna, maybe one day she mentions it to Anna, and all of a sudden Anna's like, well, you know what? That's been a concern of mine for years too, and then you guys can come together and we can work on that as a group and problem solve. So here's where I have experienced troubles with neighborhood watches when I've tried to, I've been asked to help start them before. They're a lot of work, and it takes time and commitment. And generally what it is it's the neighborhood's responsibility to start, maintain, grow the neighborhood watch. And police just kind of help with assistance, whether it's coming in and doing a training, or even talking, once a month, hey, this is what we're seeing in the city of Verona, or this is what we're seeing in your certain neighborhood. That's where the police become involved. What the neighborhood watch has to do is they have to come up with a coordinator, so somebody to run their individual neighborhood watch, and then they come up with section leaders. So say I'll just keep going back to you, Mr. Steiner. We'll take Mr. Steiner's neighborhood. He lives up behind Quick Trip area on East Verona Avenue. So say he decided to map his neighborhood off as everything north of East Verona Avenue and everything east of North Main Street. So all the way up to Einiken on the far north end of town. That we could consider one neighborhood. And he's going to be the coordinator of that whole neighborhood up there. Well, he would have section leaders. So maybe one of the section leaders would be everybody north of Cross Country Road and east of North Main, everybody south of Cross Country Road and north of Silent Street, or the street by the library, and then everything south of the library but north of the Quick Trip there. So now we have that neighborhood broken off into 3 sectors. And it just kind of, it breaks up the responsibility to that neighborhood, and they can concentrate more on individualized neighborhoods within that. And then everybody would report back to the coordinator, Mr. Steiner, on all 3 of those sectors and work on issues or information sharing within that neighborhood. So that's kind of how it works. And when people realize that there's that much work to be put into it and have to be able to sustain it, that's when it kind of tires out and goes by the wayside. Like I said, they generally pick up good steam when a crime does occur in a particular neighborhood, but once people go back to feeling safe and kind of complacent, that's kind of when I'd rather watch the ball game tonight than go to the neighborhood watch program. So then communication, that's the big one. That's why, like I said, I was going to touch on some of the social media things on here. And again, it doesn't sound like a lot of people in the room use it, but that's one way that we're seeing these neighborhood groups being able to at least maintain some form of communication when they're doing that. They're at least getting the communications and the posting out there online so people can say, hey, you know what? Last night my car was broken into. This is a friendly reminder. Make sure we're locking our vehicles, rolling up our windows, removing any valuables from within our vehicles. Again, the neighborhood watch signs, we have those at the police department. If anybody decided they wanted to start one, we definitely can hand those out so members can post them in their windows for their property. And Department of Public Works has the big signs for particular neighborhoods. If you drive around, you'll see a lot of those posted anyway. Again, that's kind of one of those things that we like to post as preventative measure, so if an outsider outside of Verona decides that they want to come in and visit our city for purposes not of going to Miller's or something like that, and they see those signs, it might be a cue to, hey, let's move on, let's go over to Mount Orb or down to Belleville and see what we have down there instead of Verona.
How effective are the signs of no trespassing and?
Well, no trespassing signs, for the most part, they're gonna be effective for law-abiding citizens. I mean, every one of us in this room, we probably don't even need to see a no trespassing sign posted to know not to do it. But, obviously, sorry to keep bumping my radio. No trespassing signs, in my experience, are posted more to help with prosecuting. Because for the Dane County District Attorney's Office to charge somebody with trespassing, they generally want proof that that person knew they didn't have permission to be there. Well, we're all raised to know that if it's not your property, you stay off it, right? And generally, most people abide by that. But the criminals who are there to commit the property crime, they're there with the intent to commit a crime anyway, so they don't care if they're committing an additional crime by trespassing. So those signs aren't effective for that purpose. What they are effective for is once the police catch them for their crime, then they can also charge them with that trespassing.
So you have to have like a camera to.
Yeah, because then we could put in our reports to the judge, well, they knew that they couldn't trespass there because, Ryan Atkins had no trespassing posted on his property. So that's kind of where we see the benefit of no trespassing signs being posted. They're really not a deterrent type thing, so. In your scenario, in rural situations where you run into a lot of that is with people hunting, oh boy, I didn't realize I wasn't on so-and-so's property anymore when I shot that deer, a quarter mile over this way, and the landowner can come back, well, you should have known because I have no trespassing sign posted everywhere, so.
And how many feet apart should they be?
Well, just so people can see. I don't think there's any steadfast rule, but,
So actually, it's kind of worthless then?
I would say yes. We posted our land because the hunters used to hunt, and then all of a sudden there's a house. And a few days later we went out and every one of the signs were gone.
Yeah.
There was people coming down our driveway because the driveway was in, and they said to me, hey, this is private property. If I were you, I'd get off it. And I said, yes, I know. It's ours. What are you doing here?
yeah.
So I would
The
say
trespasser said that?
Yes.
Quick thinker.
With their guns and everything, they were deer hunting on our property.
Yeah.
And we had it posted, but they tore them down.
The property is on the corner, and there's a main street that goes by her, and then there's a little street right alongside of her. And this is stupid, but it happens. And people come down, and at the end of the side street alongside of her, there's a beach down here. A lot of people are going down to the beach.
They cut the corner.
So what they do is they slow down, and her driveway is there, and it's fairly large. So they turn in her driveway, and then they go out the other side. She has two entrances.
Yeah.
And they go through here and out the other side on the side street. So now she has a big chain. She had to get a guy to come in and put a big post here, sink it in concrete, and she has a chain, and it goes right across, and then in the middle of the chain, she has a little sign, and it says private property.
Yeah.
But she puts the chain up, and it's the only way to keep these people from cutting through.
Right.
And then the opposite happens for strangers that aren't used to this. they'll go around the corner and down to the beach. So they're coming back and they forget to go to the corner and turn. They hit her driveway and they go across. And then all of a sudden there's the chain in
They
front.
can't get out.
They have to go around and go back out again.
Yeah.
So it's aggravating.
Yeah.
I've tried to give her ideas, but you know, what can you do when you have two entrances to the property?
Right. Yeah, you just hope people would respect property, but it
but they
seems
don't.
like it's getting less and less every year, so.
And it seems that when a female opposes, or you haven't given consent for them to invade your property, and you make the attempt to approach them on it, they seem to want to overtalk a female. And how do we remedy that?
Well, you know, again, if you're experiencing issues with people trespassing on your property, again, I always say contact us for help. Because at least then, you know, we can assist with the mediation, with the talking part, and we can document that, you know, this person has been told to stay off of this particular property, and then we can explain to him or her what will potentially happen if they don't comply with that. And again, then it, you know, it's not a your word versus their word, or you know, your word saying this happened and them denying it. It can be documented. So again, it's one of those things that it may not seem like it's a big deal, and you may seem more like you're bothering by calling, but that's the type of stuff we encourage you to call.
Yes, well, I have my land surveyed, and I have my stakes there. And my neighbor that moved in from Madison thought that this settlement is freedom.
Sure.
And, well, it took my freedom away. So anyway, because they took the stakes out.
Sure.
And so I called the deputy, the Dean County deputy, and I found out he was more on the side of the felon than he was for me. And the second time that I called out for a deputy, I did have a human deputy, and I showed him my certificate of certification of it being surveyed. Well, that clinched it.
Yeah. It's always good
That's a lot of effort and work to have to go through.
No, I know.
Against a younger man that's like 45 or 47 years old, that's trying to go over a little old lady, trying to keep her old.
Yeah, it's always good to keep documentation and stuff like that.
And if you do call in, Mary, then the police officer puts it on his round sometime too, and just let spot luck.
Yeah.
They may catch this person too. If you don't ever call in, they don't add that to the round, and, you know.
Yeah, however, I was so disappointed with the care that I was provided with the non-protection that I called the department where he came from, and I said, I have to talk to the lieutenant on this because I'm not reaching the officer that these survey stakes were not given consent to be taken out. And that took effect. That officer had to have better training.
So, last thing again is just partnership with the local police. Again, you know, we always like to sit down and have meetings because unfortunately the majority of our contacts with people sometimes are negative, and it's always nice to be able to come in and sit down with people and meet people in these type of settings versus the ones we're accustomed to. So.
I hate to always interrupt you on this, but do you often, or do you always make what do they call, where you call in to find out if you've written up a report?
Like a
Case number.
do we
Yeah.
always give a case number?
Yes,
Well, I can only speak to the Verona Police Department.
yes, do you?
Yes, we do, yes.
Because in this case, I did not get a case number,
Yep,
and that disappointed me.
yep, always, you know, I always suggest anytime you deal with a police officer on a matter, ask them for their business card. Then it'll have their name on it, and there's usually a line like ours is just a blank one. should have a example of one here, but this is what ours are. Ours is just a blank one where we can write our name in, and right next to our name, it says case number. You can pass that along. So we always hand those out. Any call that we're on, we write our name on, and we write the case number on. So if anybody ever needs a copy of whatever incident we helped them on, it will be documented in a report or a crash form or something like that. They can just call down the police department and say, hey, you know, on this date and this time, Officer Ryan Atkins helped me with this case number here. They changed from a while back, budget cuts. So now they're all generic cards like that. We used to have our own personalized ones.
Right.
But now we gotta take time to handwrite our stuff in. So.
It's on my bulletin board.
Yeah.
So that was the other reason why I did call.
Yep.
West Precinct.
Yeah, always ask, yep, and they can definitely, like I said, Verona can. Now, again, I can't speak with other agencies, but that's how we handle it, so it makes it easier for the person to get paperwork and reports and documentation that they need.
Well, that was a disappointment that I had to do to follow up.
Sure. Yep. So starting a neighborhood watch, again, it's you can contact us, you know, now whether we decide to just do one here at the senior center. Again, I know you guys come from all different areas, you're in the rural part, you folks are down on the south end. You know, we can still, you know, come together on a monthly basis, bi-monthly basis if we decide to do one here and just sit down and have informal discussions. You know, if you guys have questions, like, you know, you've had questions about, hey, you know, this was my experience and this is what happened. What was that right? What else could have I done? You know, we can just sit down, have coffee, whatever, and talk about it. That can be our little neighborhood, expanded neighborhood watch. So if you wanted one more localized for your specific neighborhood, now you mentioned New Age Circle, and that's a good example right there. I mean, you guys are kind of confined to your own little area. There's a lot of residences down in that one little area. If you guys wanted to have a monthly meeting, do you guys live in the condos or in the building?
We live in the high-rise one,
Okay,
the third-story.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, I've been in there before for typically EMS calls, but I'm assuming you guys have like a community room in there someplace, maybe on the first level? Or a meeting room of some sort?
Yeah, there's a smaller room.
Yeah.
With it.
So I mean, even that, you know, if you guys talk to your neighbors and decide, hey, you know what, we think it'd be beneficial for maybe every month to have Officer Atkins come down and we can ask questions, or, you know, or have.
Does the local police here have like flyers that we could hand out and say that a neighborhood watch committee is going to be formed, say on certain dates, would you please come around and join this committee? Have they got anything like that?
We don't, but I would make it up for you.
Could make it up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. If that was something, you know, I put my information on the second sheet here, so if this is something you guys decide, hey, you know, I'd like to try to start this in my apartment complex or in my immediate neighborhood, get a hold of me. We'll, you know, I'll come over, we'll sit down, we'll talk, we'll be like, hey, you know, we'll try our initial meeting. We'll shoot for this date and this time, and I'll make up some flyers, and I'd even help go around and hand them out, and, you know, we'll roll the dice. Maybe we'll get 1 or 2 people, maybe we'll get 20 people, you know.
Because the area you outlined for Brian is not where I live.
Sure.
So that's what I was wondering.
Yep.
I assume it's not, right? Because he gave all the different areas.
Bud's talking about shelter apartments, and I think most of
No, I live
the
across the street
police
on
are familiar with
Paoli.
that anyway.
So I was thinking up and down Paoli Street.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
absolutely.
even the houses that are directly behind us would be on Main Street,
Yep.
of course.
Yep, absolutely.
And because I live on the second floor, and I know there's friends that I have that live across the street from me. And this woman was telling me one time that they go to the Lutheran church, they're right around the corner from here. And that they used to walk through the backyards between, on the other side of our apartment house, and then they'd go through their backyards to go to church.
Sure.
And that was a long time ago, because now a tremendous amount of undergrowth has come up behind our building and you can't get through.
Right.
But then I got thinking one time that if there was ever anything going on where some guy was maybe trying to get in, or a gal trying to get in cars or something like that, they could hide behind some of these buildings, because you can't imagine how thick and dense it is.
Yeah.
It's very, very thick.
Yeah.
And they could hide out there for a couple of hours until maybe things quieted down and you guys left or
Sure.
something.
Yep. No.
And I was thinking that if we had a watch committee, then that would maybe reduce any chance of happening.
Yeah. And not only that, what's your name?
But,
I mean, you even brought up a good point where you said it's become so thick and dense.
oh yeah,
And one of the programs that goes along with Neighborhood Watch program is called SEPTED. And it's a training that law enforcement has started to get into, but it's more of an engineering philosophy. And the reason law enforcement is using it now is because it's more of a proactive, preventative measure. And part of that training discusses foliage. And even if it is a neighborhood watch thing, you bring up a good point. I mean, that's one of the things that we're looking for is, you know, we got to think like the criminal. Hey, if I'm going to hit this house and this house, you know, here's a good spot. Well, look at all these trees and brush that's growing up. Now, is it growing up because that's how the landowner wants it, or the city wants it, or is it just because it's lack of landscaping, you know, people not pruning and stuff like that? That's another good reason to have a neighborhood watch. Come together and say, hey, you know, I've been noticing that, you know, on the north side of all of our houses that, you know, there's this tree line here with all this brush growing up, and then boy, if somebody really wanted to hit our houses, that right there would be a good place for them to hide out, and they could just go from backyard to backyard. I motion that, hey, next weekend we all get together. If, you know, so-and-so's got a trailer and a pickup, why don't we do some pruning? I mean, simple stuff like that, you know, where you get all the neighbors together and say, hey, let's do this. Let's clean this all up, so if somebody is back here, guess what? They ain't gonna be able to hide. We can see.
see,
Or
our
if it's
parking lot
something,
for Sheckler Terrace, there's 22 cars
sure,
that are totally exposed the whole time.
yeah,
There's no garages.
yeah,
And if somebody was prone to trying to break in, it would be a simple thing. At 1 o'clock in the morning, they could pick whatever car they
Sure.
wanted, you know.
yeah. So I mean, it's things like that. It's things where we sit down, you know, you might have something that you've been thinking about that nobody else has been thinking about, and all of a sudden you bring it up at a meeting. Hey, that makes complete sense. You know, what do we got to do to make this happen? You know, maybe it's the city's property, and we could, you know, sit down with, you know, Ron down at DPW or Greg Denner and say, hey, you know what? Is there any reason we can't remove this tree or remove this, you know, shrub line here? And this is why. You know, we feel like this is a safety concern, that if somebody, you know, wanted to break into vehicles or assault one of our residents at this apartment complex, it'd be very easy. However, if we remove this item, you know, that could alleviate the potential for a problem and make our residents feel safer. You know, I guess my question is, who wouldn't be for that? You know, who wouldn't be for wanting to help and take that step? So I mean, again, that's the type of stuff we're talking about for these meetings. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Do landlords comply if there is an overgrowth of underbrush?
Well, you know, obviously, if it's an ordinance violation or a state statute violation or something like that, well, yes, and then they would be obligated to comply.
Copy that down.
Now, again, if it's not any of those, then it's working on getting them to comply. And again, if you, when you get a group of people, citizens together, and they're trying to band together for, you know, a specific goal, a specific positive goal, you know, there's power in numbers. I mean, if you were to go to that landlord and say, hey, you know, this is the group we formed, and these are the suggestions that we're giving to you to make you feel, to make us feel safer, you know, this is what we'd like you to do, you know, again, I would like to say that they would comply with it, they may not. I mean, you can always, you know, use persuasion, you know, the liability is a big persuasion point, you know. Oh, hey, that's fine that you're not willing to do this for us, but just so you know, it's gonna be documented that we asked you to help out with the situation, and if something, you know, God forbid something happens as a result of your non-action, guess who we're gonna be looking at? You know, so I mean, like I said, there's power in numbers, and that's another thing. Bring a landlord or bring a representative of that apartment complex into these neighborhood watch groups. You know, have them feel like they're members of the group, so they're more apt to work with you than, you know, against you.
Do aldermen in this city work with that? You're an alderman.
I work with groups of people, but if there's issues, I refer everything to the police department. Issues like this. I carry no authority. I'm just a liaison between the citizens who have elected me to do their work. Okay? But I do transmit information if need be.
Yep, absolutely. Lots of times up in Mr. Steiner's neighborhood, I'll have contact with citizens where they'll have, you know, whether it'll be a neighbor dispute or something like that, and Mr. Steiner's name gets mentioned quite frequently, so his citizens really lean on him for guidance and support, which he does a very good job of, so yeah, we do hear that a lot.
He's a big guy. Lean on you,
Not as
right?
big as the Incredible Hulk.
So one other thing, if you want to flip to the second page on the observations. So again, one of the things I mentioned about the neighborhood groups is the police part of it. We can help with whether it's a training or a topic that the group wants us to present on. And one of the big things is being able to train members of the neighborhood group to be better at observations, you know, and better at reporting. Because that's one of the things that we see when people do call in to the police to report things. They're not getting enough information to help us be able to do our jobs effectively. And that's one of the things in the neighborhood groups that we can talk about and we can train on. You know, getting a better description of a suspect or getting a better description of a suspicious vehicle or something like that. So you can report exactly what you saw to the police, so we can have as much information as possible to be able to figure out what was going on.
Number C, or letter C, unknown person or persons. Can we ask, well, I do, if they have a license?
Absolutely, yep. And that's the reason I put that in there too, is door to door. It's a big time of the year for people to be going door to door. You're gonna start seeing a lot of it with the weather. That is, people going door to door. The ordinance is written, basically if they're trying to sell something, they have to be registered with the city. Okay, so they have to get a permit from the city, which means that they have to provide identification, and they're subject to a background check. If they pass that and they're given their permit, then they're free to go. But they're issued that permit, which they're supposed to keep on their person and present every time they go door to door. So and then they are also on file with City Hall. So if somebody does come to your door like that, my first suggestion, again, I don't like to have people live in fear, but my suggestion now in this day and age, if you're not expecting somebody at your door and you don't recognize somebody at your door, just don't answer the door. Okay, if they want to leave a business card or something like that, and come back at a later date and time, that's what I always recommend. I'm not telling people how to live their life, but that's how I do it. And that seems like that's the safest way to do it nowadays. Is just if you're not expecting somebody and you don't recognize somebody, you don't open the door. I was gonna hit on this at the end, but I'll hit on it now. You know, we got some information that went out a couple weeks ago of a company going door to door right now, trying to solicit for working on roofs. They weren't in the Verona area, but they were in Wisconsin, and that's what they're doing. They're going door to door. Now, how you can get around the seller's permit is if you're offering a service, information on a service, but you're not trying to sell it, which I don't know how you differentiate there. But if you're offering a service, then you don't have to get that permit, if that makes any sense to you. So what this roofing company is doing, they're not a roofing company, that's what they're portraying themselves as, is they're going door to door and they're offering services to repair roofs and give estimates and stuff like that. Well, they're working in groups, and once they get into your house, they're basically casing the houses. You know, they're looking around and seeing what valuables are in there, who lives in there, is there a dog in there, kind of for we'll come back later and, you know, get this, that, and the other type thing. So that's all I always recommend. If you're not expecting somebody, if you don't recognize somebody, don't answer the door. That's always the best, safest bet. So yes, door to door. If you do decide to open it, yes, you ask them for that information that if they're registered with the city of Verona, and they have to display that. So if you happen to open the door for somebody and they're doing that and you ask them for it and they don't have it, please call the police. You need, you know, tell them thanks but no thanks, shut and lock the door and call the police. Because we need to make contact with that person and figure out who they are and what their business in town is. So again, you know, just the biggest thing I can stress to you guys is you know your neighborhood. You know who lives in your neighborhood. If something doesn't seem right, you know, whether it's an abandoned vehicle that hasn't moved in a while, a vehicle that's driving really slow on your street, any of that stuff, how minimal you think it is, report it to us and we'll look into it. Again, that's the big thing with Neighborhood Watch, is you're getting everybody in your neighborhood to do that. So, you know, if you're at church on Sunday morning and your neighbor down the street doesn't go to that church, or they went to church Saturday night and they're home, you know what? You might be someplace else, so we don't have your eyes and ears watching the neighborhood, but your neighbor's watching it. So it's a group effort. It's just not one or two people in the neighborhood looking out for everybody. It's everybody taking ownership and looking out for each other. Not only their property, but other people's property. And then the big one too, write down what you're seeing, you know. If, you know, you're seeing a red, you know, Dodge Dakota pickup truck driving through the neighborhood real slow, you know, write it down. Red Dodge pickup truck, dent in the driver's side door, cracked mirror. Write all that details down, so when you do call the police and give it to us, we have that description. Because there's a lot of red Dodge Dakota pickup trucks on the road, but they don't all have dents in their door and cracked rear mirrors. Big thing nowadays with cell phones, you know, you can take pictures of things and video. You know, don't be afraid that if, you know, hey, that car looks suspicious over there, snap a picture of it and give us a call. We can take a look at that picture and get a lot of information off of the picture. You know, if somebody in your neighborhood, if somebody's walking down the street, you know, they're carrying a large backpack and they don't look like anybody from the neighborhood, and you don't know who they are, you know, you ain't got to run right up in front of their face and say, hey, look at the camera, take a picture. You know, just discreetly hold up your camera and take a picture and give us a call and say, hey, you know, might not be anything, but I saw this guy in his mid-20s, and you know, I know all my neighbors around here, and nobody has kids that age or grandkids that age, and this guy just looked like he didn't fit in. He was wearing this backpack, and it looked like he was looking at every car he walked by, and by the way, you know, here's what he looks like. Hey, great, can you send that picture over to me? You know, that's where, we solve a lot of our crimes with pictures and video recordings nowadays. You'd be surprised, so. So yeah, that's kind of the gist for neighborhood watch. You know, just to recap, you know, it's just getting together, knowing your neighbors, trying to meet on a regular monthly, if not bi-monthly basis, and just discussing issues with the neighborhood, improvements that can be made, and just having everybody get a vested interest in their property and everybody else's property and discussing prevention things. Again, the Verona Police Department, we got on Twitter. Anybody here heard of Twitter or used Twitter? I don't personally, okay? And I apologize, but this is the way we're able to almost give instantaneous updates to the community, to the citizens. Like most of the times, if you guys read the Verona Press, you're going to get the information, but you're going to get it 2 weeks later, a month later, whenever they decide to run it. And it might, you know, it might no longer be pertinent to what's going on. With technology nowadays, our Lieutenant Dresser is who's in charge of this Twitter account. If we have vehicle break-ins at 2 o'clock in the morning, a bunch of them, we can call Lieutenant Dresser at home and wake him up and say, you know, Lieutenant, we had 6 cars broken in up on Enterprise Drive within the last 2 hours. He can get right on that and send it out. And anybody that's following that will instantaneously get it on their phone. Oh boy, you know, 2 blocks away, 5 cars were just broken into last night. You know, and it's just another reminder that, hey, I need to be proactive. I need to lock my doors on my vehicle in my house. I need to make sure my windows are rolled up. I need to make sure I didn't leave my purse sitting on my, you know, front passenger side seat. Those type of things. So, you know, if anybody is inspired after we leave here today to hop on social media and open a Twitter account or Nextdoor, which I'll quickly show you, you know, that's the address there. We're at Verona WI_PD. That's where you can get all that information. We also send out crime prevention tips on there. We send out community events like our National Night Out, or if we do car seat inspections, we'll put that out. So it's informational too. So that stuff is on there. My info is there with my direct number and my email. You guys can always email me or call me with questions or concerns, or hey, you know, I want to try to start a neighborhood watch group. That's where it starts, just with a phone call or an email to me, and I promise I will get back to you. If I'm not working that day, I will get back to you immediately thereafter when I return. So,
Excuse me,
yeah.
I gave the double paper here to this young guy here, so if he took mine, can I have another
Yeah,
one?
absolutely, absolutely. You can have mine.
You gave me yours.
I gave you mine.
So,
You make me sound like a criminal.
Yeah, right.
You took my paper.
the second form here is a form on vehicle break-ins. I'm actually trying to start a new program in the city of Verona, which I borrowed from the Sheboygan Police Department. They do, we have a vacation watch program that we do here in Verona. So if you go on vacation, obviously you want to lock up and secure your home and all that stuff, but you can come down to the police department and request a vacation watch check. So if you're gone for a couple of weeks or something, we can swing by your house on, you know, on a daily basis, or whenever we have free time, just, you know, take a look around, make sure that, you know, you don't all of a sudden have a broken window and stuff has been taken. So we have that program. What I'm trying to start is a vehicle security check program as well. And Sheboygan Police Department did it, and they got good feedback on it. And typically what we would do would be during the nighttime, because our officers at night, they try to get out and do a lot of foot patrol. and a lot of bike patrol, because it's a lot harder to see an officer dressed like this out walking at night versus driving that car with the headlights on and the reflective police and all that stuff. You can see that coming from a mile away. That's a little harder to see us when we're dressed in dark blue and black and riding on a black bicycle. So we try to do that as much as we can. Because again, if people are out there doing stuff, it's easier to catch them, and if people know we're out there doing it, it's just another little thing in the back of their head that, hey, you know, Verona does a lot of bike patrol at night or foot patrol. Let's, again, go to Mount Horror, down to Belleville, well, they might not have that option type thing. So the form that I'm trying to get approved is when our officers are out doing that at night or even at day, it's just a simple one around the car. You know, we're not pulling door handles or anything like that. We're not going into vehicles. We're just doing a quick inspection of that car and saying, all right, the vehicle's all locked up, the doors are locked, all the windows are completely rolled up, nobody left their purse or their wallet or their laptop on the front, you know, invisible, and we just basically give it a little pass-fail. It's like a little parking ticket that you check off, you know, pass, congratulations, we appreciate you doing your part to help crime prevention in the city of Verona, or we give you a little fail, and then there's several boxes of why you failed your vehicle check. You know, like vehicle unlocked, we check, you know, if your vehicle is unlocked, and then we try to, because we can run license plate numbers and know the registered owner, then we try to follow up with that person, be like, hey, you know, we did a courtesy vehicle check of your vehicle, and we found that, you know, you left your vehicle unlocked. Hopefully this is just not an everyday occurrence for you. Maybe you were running late to Miller's and had to get in there and forgot to lock it. Just a reminder, because again, most property crimes are preventable if we're taking proper steps. And this one here I just put together for cars. Obviously, always remove keys. I suggest removing garage door openers too, because if, you know, to a criminal, if they see that garage door opener, not only are they seeing access to your vehicle, they're seeing access to your house. Because most people, they're not locking that interior door from the garage into their residence because they're thinking, well, nobody's going to get into my garage because they can't get into the overhead garage door. So that can be a freebie into your residence too. They might not come in at that date and time, but they might take your garage door opener, write down your address, and come back the next day when you're at work. So, you know, we got to get past the days of, you know, I grew up on a small farm in Fenimore, and I know my parents still leave the keys in their car parked in their driveway out in the farm. And, you know, and a lot of people are still under that mindset that they'll leave the keys in the car and it unlocked, and it's not a good thing to do nowadays. So make sure we're doing that. Always lock, close your windows, because again, I've been here since 2003. We've had one vehicle break-in where somebody actually broke a window. So I would almost say 99+% of all the vehicle break-ins, we call them, they're not actually break-ins because they're not breaking anything to get in. All they're doing is they're walking down the street at 2 in the morning and they're pulling door handles. And we'll go past this one because the door handle's locked. And when they pull on one and the door opens, they're checking it. So that's a big one. Make sure that the door is locked, because they're not breaking windows to get in because they don't want that noise. You know, they don't want the noise of them smashing out a window at 2 o'clock in the morning. The one vehicle that we had where the window was actually smashed is because somebody left a nice laptop on the car. Okay, they want to be anonymous. They want to be in and out in a hurry. They want the least amount of attention as possible. And breaking a car window is going to draw a lot of attention. So it's got to be a high reward reason for them to break that window. They're not breaking that window for a cup of change in the center console. They're breaking it because they see a laptop or they see a purse. That's the reason they're breaking windows. So there you go. Don't leave valuables in plain sight. If you can't remove them from the vehicle for whatever reason, put them in the trunk, put them in the center console, lock them in the glove box. Out of sight, out of mind. Again, they're not wanting to do a 360 around your car and be there for 5 minutes, you know, checking every nook and cranny. They want to just be discreet, and they want to walk by, and as they're walking, their eyes are to the right, and they're just seeing if there's anything they can see. If they can't see anything in plain sight, they're going to move on to the next. If you got a car alarm, activate it. You know, we all don't have the luxury of parking our vehicles in the garage. My wife gets our garage parking stall, and the rest are for the kids' bikes. So mine is outside of the garage. Try to at least park it in your driveway. People are less apt to come into your driveway to check a vehicle. But even if it's in your driveway, make sure that it's locked and secured. If you can on your garage, if you have to park in the garage, consider installing a motion light detector. Again, you know, it might be a little annoying with animals and stuff like that, but it's one of those things that they want it to be dark. The minute they walk past your driveway, if a light pops on, they're gonna keep walking. They're not gonna come into your driveway. If you have to park on the street, if you got family in town, try to park under a street light. Again, just more visibility on your vehicle is gonna deter that person from, you know, targeting your vehicle. Then again, I keep coming back to this, report suspicious activity or criminal behavior. If you see someone in the neighborhood that just doesn't fit in and you think that they're, you know, paying a little bit too much attention to that particular residence or that particular vehicle, call it in. Get a description, give us a call. And then the last one, I said this before, if your vehicle is broken into or your residence or any type of crime, please report it. Don't feel foolish, don't feel stupid. You know, we all are a victim of something at some point in time in our life. I've been a victim of property crime several times myself in my life. You know, granted, that's when I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. So, but don't feel foolish. You aren't the only one. It happens to all of us, and that's what the police are here for. You know, if you have an officer that responds and isn't doing a satisfactory job, or you know, isn't helping you to the best of his or her ability, you know, you always have that right to call a supervisor and to say, hey, you know, I feel like I wasn't taken seriously, or you know, the quality of service I was provided wasn't adequate. So people have down days.
Sure,
So
it's like anyone, when you have a job, some days are just not as good as other days.
And then not to take up too much more of you guys' time, but one other thing I'll just mention real briefly is IRS scams are going around. Has anybody heard anything about that?
Yes,
Okay, yeah,
I was being sued.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that around Dane County. We've actually had a couple incidents here in Verona.
It was just last week.
Yeah, so IRS, I'm right here on their website, okay? The IRS does not call, okay? Their first attempt at, if they have business with you for whatever reason, is always a letter, okay? So if you're getting a call most specifically on your cell phone, which they probably don't have, it is a scam, okay? What they'll do too is they're gonna give you their ID number. Write that down, okay? Ask for their name, their ID number, or their badge number before you hang up. And then you can always call the real IRS and let them know. But IRS does not call, IRS does not threaten to sue, IRS does not threaten to call local law enforcement, okay? And these are the types of things they're doing. They're targeting elderly. So they're basically trying to scare people into giving them credit cards. IRS will never ask for your credit card over the telephone number or over the telephone. So again, these are things that people are contacting you from the IRS. You can get their information and just say, I will call back your supervisor, and I guarantee you won't hear from them again. So just be aware of that, okay? Spread the word on that. It's one of the things we put out on our Twitter, that there is the IRS scam going around. So, anybody have any questions on that? Always call us too. We document those. We follow up with the FTC, that's the Federal Trade Commission. They're the federal agency that's supposed to investigate those scams. The thing you're gonna see is when they're making these phone calls, if we have caller ID, they're actually spoofing their phone, which, if I can break it down, is there's devices that are made by Magic Jack is one of the companies. I don't know why they would ever make something like this, because I can't think of one legitimate purpose for its use, but it's something you can plug into your phone, and basically, instead of dialing from your phone, you're dialing from this little device that gets plugged into your phone, and whatever number you're dialing into there, when you call the person you're calling, that number will show up on the caller ID. So I can basically plug in the Verona Police Department's 845-7623 number if I wanted to. Then I could call you, Anna, on your phone, and you pick it up, and you're saying 845-7623, and say, hey, well, I'm with the Verona Police Department. You have a fine that you owe us, and if you don't pay it, we're going to come arrest you. And then, maybe you do your homework and you take that number and you hop online, 845-7623. Well, boy, that is the Verona Police Department. That's probably true. I better send in $150 so I don't go to jail. So that's what they're doing. It's going to look like a legitimate number because they're using those spoofing mechanisms to have a legitimate number on there. But when you call back the legitimate number, you're going to get a legitimate agent.
Yeah, well, this came over on our caller ID is not a non-listed number.
Well, they just weren't as good. So, yeah.
And so, of course, we didn't answer it.
Yeah, no,
So
absolutely.
we just came in and then I pushed delete.
Yeah, good for you. That's exactly what
I
I did.
did the same thing on mine.
Yeah.
And when I first met Sandy, why, I gave her my phone number after we got to know each other.
Mhm.
So she called me one night and it came up on her ID. What does it say? It says something.
I don't know, this is,
You've forgotten it. It says something about not active or some other word.
Mhm.
I never knew that.
Mhm.
And she was getting ready to hang up because she said, well,
well, that's when I was in Tennessee.
yeah, it scared her because it came, my number didn't come up and my name didn't come up. It just has some other thing.
Yeah.
So, but I've had that on there for, I don't know how long.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it also, even though I sign up every year, every 2 years, whatever it is,
For the no call.
yeah, for the no call thing, that has a tendency to fall apart once in a
Well, it
while.
doesn't fall apart, they just find ways around it.
Yeah.
That's exactly
and
what it is.
These hackers can get into anything.
Well, they hack the federal government, if they can hack the federal
Yeah, if
government.
they can get into the White House, they can get into us.
Yeah, and that's.
So
the
that's why I
unfortunate-
don't have anything on my telephone.
Yep, and that's exactly right, and that's why, again, the best policy, like I said, if somebody comes to your door and you're not expecting them, or you don't recognize them, don't answer it. If it's that important, they'll leave them a legitimate business card. Same thing with the telephone calls nowadays. I do it at home. I wouldn't suggest you guys do it if I didn't do it myself. If you don't have caller ID, I suggest looking into getting it, because it is a good tool. If it's a number you're not recognizing or you're not expecting a phone call, let it go to voicemail. You can always call back, because that's what they want you to do. They want you to answer. These scammers generally aren't gonna leave a message because they're moving on to the next victim. They're not gonna take the time to leave that 10-second message in hopes that you call back, okay?
I have an answering machine too, and I think that helps because on these, well, I hate to say this, but these political calls,
Sure.
particularly with our illustrious governor, I'm getting a lot of calls on him now,
Sure.
And on an answering machine, again, all it does is say, after 4 rings, it says, hi, this is Bud, sorry not in, please leave your name and number.
Mhm.
Well, I find that when they hear that, they hang up,
Mhm.
because they know there's no live voice.
Sure. Yep.
And when I come home at night, on my answering machine, there's a little spot and it flashes like this, so I know I've got a phone call.
Sure.
And then there's another space that'll have 1, 2, 3, whatever calls I got.
Yep.
So I go over and I hit a button,
Yep.
and all of a sudden, there's nothing. And then the voicemail comes on, and it'll say, your second number is. So the first number never left any message.
Yep.
So I know right away it was probably a political call or
Yep, or
something. If
scam.
they don't leave a phone number, I just
Yep.
ignore the whole thing, you know?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So again, this last thing real quick, it's called Nextdoor. And I'm not, you know, obviously I don't work for them and anything like that, but this is something I use too at home. I don't think that thing can grab my home address, but I'll kind of show you.
I don't even think it's pointing at it. It's
Okay.
pointing like over
All right.
there.
I'll show you how it works. So this is a new program that they put out, and it works, again, like a modern neighborhood watch kind of thing.
Can you see?
And I will put in my address here. And what's nice about this program is it can verify every legitimate physical address. Okay, so if I put something, if I'm trying to scan this site, if I'm trying to get on this neighborhood site for whatever reason and do whatever it is I'm trying to do, I have to have a legitimate address. And then this company can verify the legitimate address with the legitimate homeowner, okay? So that top one there happens to be my address. So I'll click on it, and then I gotta enter my email address that you guys all have anyway, and it's my save one. Long government email address. I love it. All right. So now it'll say click on your neighborhood. Email address. Hold that. Well, how did that not email? Uh-oh, I just did this at the PD and it worked.
Try mine.
Discover your neighborhood.
All right, let's try yours.
201, no way.
Oh, see, there it goes. It verified. All right, you want to type in your email address?
Well, you can type it in.
Okay.
D as in dog, S as in Sam,
Okay.
71 @tds.net.
Huh. There we go. So,
So it shows a little map of where we are.
it shows a little map, and what it does, it says, great, north of West Verona Avenue is your neighborhood. So somebody in Mr. Steiner's neighborhood has already started a Nextdoor program. So now, he's got to register. This is all free. Everything on here is free. They don't even do advertisement like a lot of these other places do. I'm not quite sure how they make their money. But, so it shows Mr. Steiner exactly what neighborhood, if he were to join this, where he's getting access to it. Now, where I am down here, I can't even get information on his group. Okay, I would have to send out an invite and have them accept me to get it. Like right now, our Cathedral Point neighborhood, since we started one 5 years ago, we got invites to join ours from Scenic Ridge, from Military Ridge, and from Hawthorne Hills. So we have 5 neighborhoods now connected. And you can see the stuff that, these are the things that people in this neighborhood have discussed. They've discussed car break-ins, babysitters, we get that a lot. So like if we get somebody, since we're in a newer neighborhood and people are constantly moving in, we'll get people to hop on here like, hey, we just moved the neighborhood, and anybody have daughters between the ages of 12 and 15 that babysit type thing. But that first one's the biggest reason I bring it up, because again, this is instantaneous information that you get either on your email or your cell phone. Like me and my wife we were sitting at home a couple weeks ago watching a movie. I happened to be on my off day, so I was staying up a little later than normal. We're watching a movie. And all of a sudden, we get a notice on our thing saying, hey, the Verona Police Department are out with a guy on Range Trail at East Whispering Pines Way. That's a block away from where I live. we look out the window and here's the lights and the instantaneous. I mean, it's not 2 hours later after it already happened, and it's not 2 weeks later when I read it in the Verona Press. I was able to look out my window because the neighbor up there saw the lights and sends this out. Now, everybody in the neighborhood who has access to this and has their device on or has it readily available can be like, uh-oh, you know, something's going on 2 doors down, you know, either lock the doors or stay inside or whatever it is. So that's the big reason I really like this next door is it's instantaneous. Anybody that posts something, you can see it. This is another project that I'm hoping for down the road is to get the police department on, because again, it can be instantaneous things that we can get out to the public. So,
How far reaching is this? In other words, is this strictly Verona? Or can you put somebody's name in? Well, I have a daughter in Illinois, so if I put her name and address in, could that come up on there?
oh yeah, absolutely, and it'll give her specific neighborhood too. Now, the specific parameters are set. Now, Nextdoor won't let you get super big on what you set your parameters for, but the parameters are set by the initial person who starts it. So whoever started Mr. Steiner's neighborhood, they made it pretty big, a lot bigger than ours. Yeah, his particular neighborhood goes all the way from, well,
Harmony Hills, it should be all the way down to Prairie Heights.
well, you're everything north of Verona Avenue. You're everything north of Verona Avenue. The only thing that you don't have on here is Meister Drive out by Epic. So you got everything north of Verona Avenue. You're not south of Verona Avenue. But yeah, so they took the divider at the old
It
highway.
must be on a couple of them then.
Business 18, yeah. So yeah, it's called Nextdoor. You know, again, if you guys go home and look at it, you know, it lists all the stuff that you can do on there. It's a great tool. I know we don't all have time for it. I'm not on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or anything like that. This is the only one that I'm on because again, it's
Now, is there a charge on that?
nope.
It's free?
Free. Yep, absolutely. So I encourage you guys to take a look at it. It's definitely a way you guys can keep connected with your neighbors. So, all right. Well, I've taken up a lot of your guys' time. Do you guys have any questions for me or? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Very good job.